Just letting you know, Patrick, you're a little difficult to hear.
Okay, now that the meeting has started, we'll do an official roll call. Okay, do we have Councillor Martin? No. Councillor Van Tilburg?
Present.
Councillor Utley?
Present.
Ron Gasparetto?
Present.
Mayor Davis?
Present.
Councillor Antosky?
Here.
Okay, we have Patrick present. We have Nicole Wilmot present. We have Rita Marie Hadley. Heidi DeVries.
Present.
Awesome. And Nahed.
Present.
Okay, and Tara Tran.
Present.
Okay, and I think that is completed our roll call. We will now head to our elections for chair and vice chair. Members of the committee, I'd now like to open the floor for nominations for chair, noting any nomination needs to have a mover and a seconder, please.
Madam Chair, I'd like to nominate Councillor Van Tilburg and Councillor Wall as co-chairs of the committee, seeking a seconder. Councillor Antosky.
Okay.
And let's hold the vote quickly before he changes his mind.
Okay, and is that all the nominations? No more nominations?
I move nominations be closed.
Okay. And we'll take a vote. Nominating Councillor Van Tilburg as chair and Councillor Wall as co-chair. All in favor?
I presume now that Councillor Carpenter is here, he has the vote now, right? I'm an observer.
Is Councillor Wall on the committee? Is Councillor Wall on the committee?
I don't believe so.
I don't know.
No, I don't think he is. So I'm just wondering who nominated him as second as co-chair.
My rationale for that was they are both Ward 5 councillors, councillor.
Yeah, but we can't have someone that's
Right, not on the
not on the
committee.
committee.
Oh, okay, all right, I'm sorry. So I'm going to change my wording, Darlene, to nominate Councillor Van Tilburg as chair. Seeking, I think Councillor Antosky seconded that, or Councillor Carpenter.
You were muted,
Except with
Darlene.
thanks to my nominator.
Sorry about my being late. I had a constituency issue I had to deal with.
Sorry, Councillor Outler, was there a mover and a seconder for a co-chair nomination?
I know Councillor Antosky voted or seconded the first motion, but I saw Councillor Carpenter's hand go up with the second nomination for Councillor Van Tilburg as chair.
Do we have a co-chair traditionally?
No, we have a chair and a vice chair.
Vice chair.
Any nominations for vice chair?
I'll nominate Councillor Carpenter.
And seconded by?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Okay, so we have moved by Councillor Utley, nominating Councillor Van Tilburg for chair, and moved by Councillor Carpenter and seconded by Councillor Van Tilburg, that Councillor Carpenter is vice chair.
Moved by Councillor Utley.
Moved by Councillor Utley, seconded by Councillor Van Tilburg. All in favor? Okay, approved. Thank you. Okay, if we can have Councillor Van Tilburg chair the meeting.
Oh, thank you. And I just want to thank all the previous chairs. It's been a long road and a great journey to be on for this project. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest for items on today's agenda? Seeing none, let's move to presentations and delegations. Members of the working group, there are 3 delegations here for today's meeting. Each delegate will have 10 minutes inclusive of questions for the working group in keeping with the City of Brantford's procedural bylaw, section 15.6.2. Please ensure all comments are directly related to the matter before the Mohawk Lake District Working Group. So coming first will be the Aboriginal Healthcare Center, Joanne Matina, Connie McKnight, and Pat Mandy. I'd ask Joanne Matina and Connie McKnight, Pat Mandy to come forward to speak to item 5.2, community group expression of interest, process update. Please note that you have 10 minutes for your remarks. And are you speaking or are we muted?
Pat, you're muted.
Anyway, Pat Mandy, on the board of Water Desnay. I'm going to go through the slide deck, but I believe you have a copy of it. So I'll just go quickly through. Just to start, I know we've met many of you over the last few years as we've been in development, but just to let you know, Water Desnay is the only organization in the area that provides a blend of Western and Indigenous traditional medicine. We connect people in the Indigenous community and serve many of the other non-Indigenous folks in the neighborhoods to support health and well-being by integrating resources and meeting the broader determinants of health. And we have been, we have 2 sites, one in Hamilton and one in Brantford, but we actually had our beginning in Brantford in 1998. We provide primary care and health promotion programs. So I'm going to just take you a little bit through our journey and go to the next slide. We have been, our dream and our board started in actually 2014 to be looking at capital redevelopment. We want to be a center, the model will be a model as we build it of reconciliation. And it's one that we want Brantford and the Indigenous community to be very proud of. It will celebrate the culture. It will be a legacy space for the community and for the Indigenous folks who attend. Next slide. As I said, it's been early 2014 that the board started to undergo capital planning process, and we've been working with the Ministry of Health on that. We originally had some consultants to help us through that process because there's been a number of changes in the capital process through the Ministry of Health over time, and we kind of got caught in the middle of the changes and were kind of the guinea pigs as they were refining their process. So it's taken us longer than we had anticipated. We did start a launch with a big launch in Brantford that was quite exciting. It was back in, I can't believe it was 5 years ago. And we have done a lot of community feedback and communication since then. If we could go to next slide. So we have met over time with some of you. We've met with members of the provincial and federal governments to talk about our project and our goals. And we have been working, as I said, through the capital process. As of currently, we're in the final stages of the business case development, and the next stage would be on to design. So next. Some of you will recognize this building. It is not an accessible building. It's too small. We've got waiting lists. It's outdated. I won't go on and on, but we really need to get into better quarters sooner than later. In fact, we've had to rent off-site space and able to accommodate our programs and still have long waiting lists for primary care and mental health. So next. So one of the things that we've done over the years is pulled together partners in Brantford, and not to, well, being a little bit honest, I really need to say we were the lead in getting the Friendship Center, now known as BRISC, back up and running in Brantford. Because we thought that it was really important that we, as the health center, were having to provide a number of programs and that the previous Friendship Center had provided, and that we were missing out on other resources that were available through the Friendship Center process. So that is up and running, and I think quite successfully. And we are looking at bringing together other services. Native housing, Brantford Native Housing is very, very interested. And I would also brag that our CEO, Connie, has managed to bring together the group of Indigenous organizations to talk about what can we do and what are our goals and what are our needs for the Indigenous community in Brantford. NOWASA, as you see, if you're not familiar with them, is Child and Youth, and they do a lot of family programs. So next. So we have looked at, over time, met with representatives from the city of Brantford to look at potential properties. The Mohawk Lake District was identified as one. And in fact, at one time was thought that the city might be able to give this, the land, as a gift to the health center. We have formally expressed interest, attended a number of presentations, and have submitted an application to the city to consider us in using some of that land. Next. So as I said, the next steps for us were finalizing the business case. We're hoping that will be soon. It also does include a site identification, which is basically the point that we're at right now. We're going to formalize the partnerships. Although a number of them organizations have expressed interest, we want to get that in writing, letters of support as we move forward, and what our governance model is, and to begin the site design. Next. So this is just to show you, we've had a similar process going on in Hamilton. We're somewhat further ahead with them, and this is the proposed site for them. And McMaster Family Medicine has also asked to be part of this. They can then serve the neighborhood as well. Next. So we did ask our architects to look at the proposed land and come up with a kind of a model if we were including other programs like NOWASA, which, as I said, the Child and Youth, our primary care, our outreach. And so they've come up with this very, very early conceptual just to demonstrate how it could or might look on the site. And the next slide is just another conceptual drawing that shows that different parts, how we could mix health, childcare. We would have space for mixed commercial. So for example, it might be a pharmacy, could be physio, other kinds of external that we can't provide. And then also bringing in housing, Brantford Native housing as part of it, so that we would be able to locate, and it's excellent for not only the clients to be able to get all their services on one site and not have to travel, but it's also excellent for the providers to be able to learn from each other. Next slide, I think, is the final one. And this is just another version of if we're looking at different situations or placements on the site. I think that's the last one. No, that's just, these are just different models on the site. Now I think it's really the last one, right? I'm trying to look at Joanne's face because she put the slide deck together. If it is, you can take the slide deck on and we'd be happy to answer any questions. I've done a really quick overview because of the time limitation.
Yeah, we got about
you want to add, I don't know.
we have a minute and a half for questions, so throw your hand up, and if anyone wishes to ask one. Councillor Carpenter. Sounds missing, Councillor Carpenter. I'm stopping the clock. Councillor Carpenter, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me
There
now?
we go.
All
Yep.
right. Well, thank you, Pat. Is the Brisk, is Brisk got a home, or could Brisk be part of that home?
It has a I'll let Connie talk because she's been working with the organizations.
So Brisk has a temporary home right now, but they are looking to find a capital space, and this would be an ideal space for them.
So there could be a partnership here. And you're renting your location at King and Darling now, and other locations as well?
We own the space on King and Darling, and we rent the other spaces.
So is your intention then to sell that space and use that capital dollars towards this kind of a project?
Yes, absolutely. Unless we can find a better service to be operated out of that site, that would be what we would be planning.
Okay. And I know we talked some time ago about using Canada, but that's not available. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Davis, you have 49 seconds.
All right. Thank you, Pat, for that present. Well, yeah, I'm awkward. How many acres do you think you need? And do you have a preferred location on these lands? I notice in your plan, you put it in a particular spot. Is there a reason for that?
Go ahead, Joanne or Connie.
So we're looking about a 3.5 to 5 acre land, depending on the size of the project when we finalize the partnerships and the parcel of land. If it's the triangular portion, we probably need a greater amount for the 5 acres. And also, sorry, the second part was, I missed that.
Your diagram shows it being in a particular portion of those lands. Is that the preferred location or just?
We're flexible. We put it there just recognizing that other people have expressed other interests in different parts of the land, but we're flexible wherever we can go.
Okay. And how would the capital be funded on this?
So we are working through the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care capital planning process, as well as looking for other donations and donors to support the project as well.
Okay. Thanks.
Depending on the partners, different partners will
Yes.
bring different funding to the table.
Yes, so there's an example would be the Ontario Housing or Brantford Native Housing. They've both bought into this, so one of them will either fund Brantford Native Housing or Brantford Native or OHOS will take it over. But the housing piece is done through bank loans. Maybe now with the capital money that was just introduced this week, announced by the Prime Minister, there may be some dollars there. And then there are other spaces that we would actually invite folks in to do work for free. An example would be OW. We might want them in half a day a week, or the legal clinic, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Feel free to stick around and see the presentations of your potential neighbors each way. We don't know how this is all going to turn out, but you may as well all get to know one another and seeing what each is proposing, and one thing feeds off another. So thank you again. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I got a question. So raising hands, do we use the participants box or do I just raise my hand?
According to my directions here, it just says to wave your hand up like this.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I would like to ask Bob Ian and Julian Jacobson to come forward to speak to items 5.2, community group expression of interest process update. Please note you will have 10 minutes for your remarks, inclusive of the working group. And this is regarding the Canadian Military Heritage Museum. Welcome, Councillor Martin. You working to get your sound, sir?
Is that working?
There we go. Yep. Carry on.
Morning, everyone. First of all, I'd just like to thank you for inviting the Military Museum to participate in this meeting. And what would have been probably one of our most ambitious years for displays and changes and commemorations and general improvements to the museum. Obviously, everything hit the fan in March, and we've been recovering ever since. It actually gave us some spare time to put more quality into the changes that we're proposing for the next year. Our focus this year was going to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the end of the war, the liberation of the Netherlands, and all those things that have been canceled, like our open house, the women's tea. They've all been put on hold and will probably be moved over to next year if we can for a timeline. Just to run you by some of the events and special focus that we had this year was we had a movie shoot last year, and we got a dispatch rider video that relates to one of our artifacts, a Norton motorcycle. And we had museum members reenacting, and it featured our motorcycle in this movie shoot. We spent all day out there doing a movie shoot for a 3-minute movie. Some of the displays I'll just mention quickly are, we've got a focus on the Polish display of tunics and uniforms, because the Polish commitment to the Second World War was very important, very significant, and we've reached out to the Polish community to help participate in that. A model tank, a really significant display of model tanks, displays some of our, some of our models from the Second World War. And what we also are featuring is a display of 4 panels of art from a local artist, Barb Sutherland, who has done World War I, World War II, Korea, and Afghanistan, with a very personal 4 panels of art that will be a major feature once we get going. And we'll tie that in with places like Glenhurst and other organizations. Remembrance Month banners have gone out. We wanted to thank Millards for working with us and promoting the museum. We've got a donation of a fully restored 1906 British artillery piece that was donated from an estate. So many changes this year, and when we do open, it'll be terrific. We're diligently working now to improve the partnership with the Galleries and Museum Association. We applied for grants and foundations to assist in the funding of our operation, and special projects are necessary to preserve our artifacts. And Julia's working on one right now that is a major proposal for a grant from the federal government, from Library and Archives Canada. And we're hoping to get that, and that will take us to that next level for digital archiving of our ephemeral artifacts. The upgrade to the washroom is one of the most important things that happened this year. It's now completely accessible, as is the rest of the building. And the parking lot's been paved and painted. And all of this would not be possible without the support, or the generous support of the city of Brantford. And we very much thank them. We're undergoing at the moment renovations at the rear storage building. It's got 5,000 square feet. It's much needed storage space. It's got a new roof. It's got insulation. There's siding on it. There's a water suppression system in there, and it'll soon have a heating system. And as far as donations still coming into the museum, we get calls all the time. Even though we're closed, where there's a skeleton crew in here walking around with masks on all the time, doing some of the displays so we can get a jump start on some of the projects that we've got going on. We want to thank also people like Young's Jewelers in the community who donated 3 beautiful display cases when they did their renovations. They'll be put into place in the museum, and will house some of our honored artifacts. It would have been a banner year, really, for the museum, but when we do open it, it'll be open with these commemorations. We'll do it safely for the not only for the visitors coming in, and it'll be for the volunteers working here. We've always had an excellent relationship with the city, and the museum has gone to that next level now. And it's a logical place down here to proudly develop a people-friendly place for local events and showcase our history in a rich heritage district. We've made a major investment in this building and the artifacts, to preserve and protect the artifacts that are so valuable to this community. And we just want to let you know that we're staying here. We're not going anywhere. And we appreciate the cooperation of other heritage organizations and the city. We're sort of the anchor down here, and we look forward to the development in the future of working with other organizations and heritage organizations and anybody else that wants to come down here and take part in this project, because it's a beautiful space down here. The people of Eagle Place have waited for a long time to have this thing developed, and I think they're going to be very pleased once they see this done. We're glad to share this venue. We've got a wide open space for community events and our partners. We're glad to work with the Mohawk Chapel, the Woodland Cultural, the Industrial Heritage Community, and any other heritage people that want to be down here. You're situated in a beautiful, sort of unique place with Mohawk Lake nearby. The development, the future is looking very bright. And like I say, we've had such a great relationship with the city. We're looking forward to the future. And we've always had great relationship with people like Jim Quinn and Tara and all the counselors. And I just like to thank you for that. I just let you know it is the logical place for a heritage district, a museum district, and a people place, lots of green space. We're looking forward to the future.
Thank you, Bob. Are there any questions from members of the working group? Councillor Carpenter?
Just a quick one, Bob. Do you need any more space than you have now?
The space that we're looking at, we're good. We're jammed inside. Outside, we hold things like the open house in the middle of the summer and events out there in the parking lot. But we just would like to make sure that we continue to have that space available that runs right along the fence line that we now have, and we're quite content with that. But if you want to offer more space, we're always open to that.
Well, I'm just wondering about future growth, whether that road stays there, whether we use the access to the canal, or we take that road out, or whether we provide sidewalk access in the future. I just want to make sure we don't move into space that we might need for road allowance.
Okay, I think there is space there that we could work with, but I think the space that's in the lease and the space in the parking lot where we are now, and I'm sure accommodation could be made to adjust some of the fence line there if the road allowance had to be changed.
Thanks for everything that you're doing there.
You're welcome.
Any other members wish to ask a question? Seeing none, I've got a couple. One is, how long have you been down there?
This would have been our 27th year down here, and this building we got the last 2 buildings down here in what is really a unique heritage area, and we are going to preserve that for the future.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you say you're always taking donations. Question number one, how are you taking those donations now? And two, do you ever have like goals that you set as like a fundraising goal for donations versus just what comes through the door?
What we're looking at is we're always looking at grants, foundations, estates. People have been very generous. Julia's been working tirelessly. She's the major runner that's out looking for grants and fundraising. And that's the challenge of the future for all museums, I think, is trying to stay open, because just trying to keep open with people coming through the door, that doesn't really work. So that's the challenge for us. We're all volunteers here. There's no paid staff, but we're making a go of it. This is a first-class operation. We've gone to that next level. We're looking forward to making Brantford proud.
It looks really good behind you. I've got one last question. Do you have a 105mm howitzer there?
No, we don't, but we'd like one if you got one.
No, I'd just like you to get one. They were old when I was pulling the lanyard. So
no, we applied a couple of years ago to have one when they were working to upsize their guns, and they went every place else but here. But we've got a 25-pounder, and the ones behind me are the war trophies that are over 100 years old that wouldn't make it outside in another 5 years, or they've been restored. And they're going to last forever. So that's something we get to share with the community and our visitors.
Oh, thank you, Bob. Feel free to, there's one more presentation. Feel free to stick around and watch it if you so wish.
Thank you.
And finally, Rita Marie Hadley and Scott Lyons from Lansdowne Children's Center. I'd ask Rita and Scott to come forward and speak to items 5.2, Community Group Expression of Interest, Process Update. Please note you've got 10 minutes for your remarks, inclusive of questions from the working group members. You're on.
Good. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to the committee. Again, as you'll recall, we gave a very full pitch at the last committee meeting just a handful of weeks ago. So respecting your time, and we won't go through that entire thing again today, but really we're here to speak in support of your endorsement of the plan as presented on the agenda, and we'll briefly speak to the 4 different options that Legal and Real Estate have laid out there in their menu, their memo to the group as well. Rita Marie?
We are pleased to see this progression, and because we have done our planning, testing how we would fit on a specific part of this, we did do comparison. We noted that staff have removed 3/4 of an acre off the upper western corner of the 22 Mohawk Street site. That's on page 25 of your package, and know that differs somewhat from the plan that you adopted last year, but understand that that was addressing staff's request for a buffer at the corner and a trailhead. So lovely to see how this ties in with the trail system, which is important for us. And acknowledging that that now makes it a 6.5 acre site. And you would know from our plans that we provided that we were referencing 7.2 acres, but we want to let you know that we could make 6.5 acres work. That would probably equate to reducing around 20 parking spots. And you may recall that our plan, based upon projecting for future capacity, was looking at 360 parking spots. So that kind of reduction is certainly well in scope. And the reference in the memo for 5.2 also actually reflects an older number. It talks about from our earlier plans before we could finesse them this past year, at a time when we thought we needed 9 acres. But you'll recall that in our submission in the spring, and as we talked to you last month, 7.2 acres was what we had adjusted to. But I guess the points are being raised just to show you that we are flexible, and we're aware that our plans are hypothetical at this point and open to adjustment. And in fact, to reiterate that point, I confirm that as we continue to adjust to what COVID means for our operations, as I shared with you last month, that we had pivoted to include virtual care as one of the ways we do services. However, there are aspects of physical therapy, occupational therapy, and recreation that we can do virtually. There are a significant amount of those that do need to be done in person, but we're still in flux around that, looking at how the whole sector and industry adapts. So there were some times, because of human conditions or technology, or the diagnosis of the child themselves, that means that we would have to do it in person. So we're in flux and at a flexible stage. And we were pleased that the planning department actually did share our technical submission with the city's consultant for the project, which helps the team guidance on how to achieve the Mohawk Lake vision, and giving that ours is a fairly large scale project. We're pleased that that was part of what went into the concept going forward.
So again, we're very pleased with this, with the progress the group has made so far. I think Rita Marie will speak again a little bit to the timing pressures that we are under. In respect to the options that have been laid out in the memo, there's about 4 different choices there and various ways that the city might consider disposing or otherwise inviting some of the participant groups here to be involved in that district. And I guess we just encourage on conclusion there, it says you may want to look at different options for different areas and different components, and we would certainly encourage the group to do that and not really just restrict the entire area to one. Lands down just at first glance, and we'll go through our due diligence, but would probably be leaning towards option 1, where we were able to own that land and to present to our other funders that as a commitment, as a significant grant from the city in support of our cause, and use that to leverage the other levels of government for our project.
So we know that with these options also comes accountability and responsibilities that we must meet as part of our due diligence. And we can confirm that for our share of the price tag beyond the usual provincial portion with the business plans, just as Eduardo Desnes was mentioning, we concluded a feasibility study this summer to support our portion, and we are in readiness to conduct a fundraising campaign. We have the professional advice that we are able to achieve that target, but for obvious reasons, we can't start a capital campaign without an address. We know about that accountability. So that does heighten the timing sensitivity of your important next decisions around the expression of interest, because the land decision is a key component, as Scott mentioned, of leveraging government resources at several levels. We have heard back from our funding ministry now in receipt of our updated business plan with these details. And so they're awaiting our responses, because when we submitted in the spring, they were under the impression that decisions might be made on the Mohawk Lake land in June. So they're holding off on moving us through the approval process pending land confirmation. And so we do find ourselves competing with other communities that are having their equivalents of lands down approved for capital. So that's our timing sensitivity.
So without repeating ourselves too often, thank you again for this update. You can see from today and from the minutes of our last meeting back in September, the urgency that we're under, and we would just appreciate anything that you can do as the working group, and when it gets to committee and council as a whole, just to expedite the process as you can, such that we might be able to take advantage of any stimulus or other funds that may come through as part of the COVID recovery in the coming months. And we're happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Councillor Utley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Scott and Rita Marie. Do you own the property that you currently operate out of?
We own the building, and there are covenants around a portion of the land under our building. There are 3 different parcels of land under our building.
And do you intend to, if possible, sell what you own and have control over to offset the cost of the new facility?
Yes, that is the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Oh, Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Rita and Scott. You know that we're busting with pride, or at least I'm busting with pride about what Lansdowne does and how you've been able to work, especially with a facility that's you outgrown some time ago. And I'm very supportive of what you want to do here. I just wanted to you read the package, so you know this is going to go to committee of the whole next month, and then we will have approved this. At that time, I guess, would you be ready to make a formal offer for us to donate land and the size and location? Would you present that to us at that time?
We would be honored to.
Thank you.
Any other questions if you want to top that one? Seeing none, thank you for your presentation, and I guess we're going to move on to the next phase.
Thank you.
You're free to watch. You're free to watch the rest of this. It's not as interesting as the 3 presentations I just saw. Oh, actually, I should not say that. How dare I? Because Tara is going to be speaking. We have 2 items on the agenda today, and let me scroll up here. I'd like to call on Tara Tran, Senior Planner, for a staff presentation. And do I need a mover right now, or do I wait till after this presentation?
I believe you're waiting after this presentation.
Very good.
Thank you, members of the working group. Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to present this presentation. So the purpose is to show you the final Mohawk Lake District Plan that is recommended to go to the November 10th Committee of the Whole Community Development meeting. We are asking this working group to provide an endorsement of the final plan for Council's consideration. Next. The purpose of the Mohawk Lake District Plan, to remind you, is to provide a comprehensive land use framework and policy direction to guide future redevelopment and revitalization for this area. This plan was one of the city's most well participated projects in recent years. We engaged over 600 people. We heard over and over again that the Mohawk Lake District should be a destination. It should generate economic development, municipal taxes, and improve property values. And it should be a hub of activity for the entire community. This vision statement reflects what we heard from the community. The Mohawk Lake District is truly a once in a lifetime opportunity to create something uniquely Brantford. Next. This is a detailed look at the overall plan. I'll provide an overall summary now, and then I'll give more details in the rest of the presentation. As I noted, the district plan provides guidance for future redevelopment. Most of that new redevelopment will be focused on the former Greenwich Mohawk brownfield properties, what we're calling the cultural and community destination area. The district plan recommends a mix of land uses here. Now, the other areas of the district are the gateway area, shown in pink, which is a transition between downtown Brantford and the district. And to the east part of the district, there are many existing recreational and natural features, such as Mohawk Park, and that would be connected through a proposed waterfront promenade along the canal. And I'm pretty excited to show you those conceptual images because I think that's kind of an exciting piece of this plan. Overall, the entire stretch of Mohawk Canal would be recognized as a cultural heritage landscape to commemorate both the natural and cultural heritage of the canal. It is noted that this designation will not prohibit development, but will ensure that important features are preserved or appropriately recognized. Next. Now, starting with the gateway area, which is the west end of Greenwich Street. The main recommendation is to incorporate wide sidewalks, multi-use paths along the canal, and include lighting and landscaping to make this street safe and welcoming. The district plan recommends that the existing mix of land uses would continue here and be upgraded with high quality urban design, such as ground floor storefronts and parking lots in the back when any new site plan applications come forward. Now, this is a closer look of the cultural and community destination area, where, as I said, that most new development would occur here. The orange, we've seen this before, the orange shows a mix of commercial and residential spaces. The blue areas are primarily for institutional or office uses, and the purple areas show the existing as well as the new museum uses. Lastly, the green area shows proposed new parks, including a 15-acre park for multi-uses, including large events. Only a couple of minor refinements to the plan have occurred since the plan was last endorsed by Council back in June 2019. These changes both occur south of the rail spur line. So they are the additional green space to provide a buffer from the existing rail and allow for a future development of a trailhead. And the institutional parcel south of the rail line was broken into smaller blocks, and a new local road was added to provide flexibility for future development. In general, the cultural and community destination area can accommodate retail and commercial activities, nonprofit or community organizations, as well as residential opportunities in the upper stories of the commercial buildings and some standalone townhouse blocks. The culture and community destination would be designed around a main street that would act as a spine of activity and would connect the new development to the existing neighborhoods to the north and south, which would also provide additional services and amenities to these areas. So here's an artist's rendering of what Main Street could look like. And this is looking north from Mohawk Street. You can see the Timekeeper's building at the corner of this entryway. Conceptually, you can see shops and cafes at ground level. Offices or residential uses could be at the upper stories. And we recommend a wide road to accommodate mainly pedestrian traffic, but some vehicle access and parking as well. These are other conceptual images at the other end of the main street at the north, where it meets the former Drummond Street Bridge. Restoring the bridge is a recommendation of the plan. Now, where Main Street provides north-south connections, we see a proposed waterfront promenade along the canal on Greenwich Street to provide an important east-west connection and would connect into existing trail systems. At all our community engagement events, people are very, very excited about this proposed promenade feature. Here are a few more conceptual images of what that promenade could look like. It's a significant feature of the overall vision of the Mohawk Lake District Plan. If this promenade moves forward, planning for it should occur early and be coordinated amongst staff in engineering and parks, as well as legal and real estate. Setbacks from the canal may require additional land from the former brownfield properties to accommodate the recommended range of transportation facilities and upgraded boulevards. It should also be coordinated with the Mohawk Canal Rehabilitation Program. Any underground infrastructure upgrades may also occur concurrently with the construction of the promenade. Additional study and design work is necessary to refine the design of this promenade, but these conceptual images show you an idea of what it could look like. A couple of more views of that really exciting promenade feature is showing you that it really could be a destination itself. And to celebrate views of the canal, you see a boardwalk here, a multi-use trail could be constructed with seating and appropriate lighting. So you can see just how exciting this concept could be. Lastly, to the east part of the district, we recommend enhancing the existing Mohawk Park and Mohawk Lake and improving access to these features. Again, the waterfront promenade would link to these features as well as to the existing Trans-Canada Trail System and help to connect this destination to visitors who are using our trail system. So now Mohawk Lake District can be an exciting stopping point along the way for people using those trails. If Mohawk water quality was improved enough, the city could consider creating a small park south of Mohawk Lake, and this would provide safe and direct access to the lake, and perhaps even a small boat launch could be constructed here. Lastly, this is another artist rendering of what Mohawk Lake District might look like upon full build out. This is conceptual, but gives you an idea of what might occur in the future for the cultural and community destination area. It's recommended that parcels south of the spur line are developed first because the services are already in place here. Future development proposals will help to guide the phasing of the other areas and would also identify what other infrastructure upgrades are needed. The waterfront promenade and the large event space would be important municipal projects that could occur in earlier stages to help reinforce the vision of the district and attract and catalyze other development. Other areas of the district could be revitalized as resources and funding are available. So we are prepared to bring a staff report before Committee of the Whole on November 10th. Staff recommends that this plan be approved with a couple of key recommendations for implementation. Those recommendations are that planning staff be directed to proceed with an amendment to the new official plan to implement the recommended land uses. It is noted that the new official plan is anticipated to go forward at a special Committee of the Whole meeting on November 19th. The Mohawk Lake District Plan amendments would then take place following that sometime in 2021. It is known that all along the district plan was coordinated with the new official plan, as well as the updated master servicing plan and the transportation master plan. Along the lines of coordination, we do recommend that a staff-led Mohawk Lake District implementation team be established. Many departments, including economic development and tourism, legal and real estate, parks, planning, and public works, they're all involved with the implementation of this plan. So if created, this implementation team could prepare a work program collaboratively and identify the priority projects and the funding strategy to implement them and report back to council for future direction. Next, so with that, we are seeking the working group's endorsement of the final Mohawk Lake District Plan. The endorsement of the plan and council's final approval will not impair this working group's future decisions on how to address the community groups. This plan can accommodate those requests if that's what's desired. And the next item on this agenda will provide an update on those working group, on how the working group might address those requests. So I welcome any questions.
Sorry, I had my mute on. Mayor Davis, followed by Councillor Utley, and there's about 30 seconds left before we go into moving it ourselves.
Like 30 seconds. All right. I've raised this before, Tara. Thanks. It was a great presentation. It makes me very excited. But so we've had two groups that came to us this morning. I think they would be, their presentation, their proposals have a lot of merit to them. And this chicken and the egg thing here, we're dividing between residential, multi-residential, and institutional use. The way the plan here that you've got, does that allow enough space for these groups to develop what they want to develop? Or if we approve these two, do we then have to go back and realign everything after we've done an official plan amendment? Like, that's kind of the chicken and the egg thing. Which comes first?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the answer is that our plan as it stands is still conceptual and has that flexibility to accommodate specific proposals from any community groups that may receive approval to move forward, and that we can make those tweaks if necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that uses up all of our time. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the motion? Whose hand went up first there? I was looking downwards.
Councillor Carpenter's hand went up first, I believe.
Councillor Carpenter is the mover and the seconder.
Like Councillor Utley, he had his went up second.
Councillor Utley is the seconder. All right. Speakers, who would like to go first? Councillor Carpenter.
Well, this has been a long time coming. Been working on this since the day Marguerite Chesky Smith started fighting for the brownfield cleanup. This is an excellent, Tara, you've outdone yourself and your staff. This is a tremendous proposal, and the communities come together. There's lots of opportunities for some of the things that will make Brantford a much better place to live. And it's a rebirth of Eagle Place and the North Ward. It really is going to, it's an opportunity. I know not everybody sees it that way, but I see this as a rebirth, a long time coming for Eagle Place and the North Ward. And how this will be funded, well, we'll have to figure that out as we move down the road and provincial or federal grants come forward and individual groups, what they can do. And we're talking about making this a destination place and providing the opportunity for Lansdowne and the others that provide good community work in our community to have homes is ideal and makes them sustainable well into the future. There's, we talk about the theater space that I know Councillor Antosky is passionate about. There's an opportunity for that space to be down there as well. There's lots of opportunity for us to make this right through to the community district. Was something that I had coined, and the previous mayor picked it up, which was great. I'm happy. I don't really care who gets credit as long as it happens. That's the way I've always worked. But this will really has real potential with the Mohawk Lake access and giving the people of Eagle Place access to Mohawk Lake across the walkway there at the head of the canal. A tremendous opportunity, and they even picked up on the watch generating station. And we shouldn't be forgetting our history there. And I just find it apropos that it's coming to us on November 10th, the day before Remembrance Day, when this used to be where the armaments and the ammunition in the plane when World War II, where all the women were working in the factories, they were making all the ammunition while all the men were over fighting the war. Not all the men, there was women over there fighting too, but this just sort of fitting timing that it's coming to council. So I'm looking forward to it, happy to support it, and thanks everybody for all their work.
Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. First of all, I want to acknowledge, being one of the newer members of council, a real debt of gratitude to previous mayors and councils for having the vision. And this is a decades-long project, and we're lucky to be in the end of it and seeing the final result. So, there's a number of things we're doing at the city that make me very excited, but this is probably the top of the list. I agree with Councillor Carpenter how the impact is going to have in the two neighborhoods, the potential to kind of reset a relationship in some respects with Six Nations, because there's lots of opportunity for partnerships here. But I have one question for staff. We've got this other group, the citizens group. I think it's the Mohawk Lake Working Group. I think that's the title. What would you recommend? How would you foresee the relationship? Going forward, what that should be between us, our working group here, and that more citizens-oriented working group? Because I get confused about that, and I'm sure other members of the community do as well.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the citizens group, in my experience working with them, are very much focused on the water quality element of Mohawk Canal and Mohawk Lake. And to my knowledge, they understand that the studies are done, but that there's only so much federal funding to take that water quality improvement to a certain point. So that group, in my opinion, could still have a role to advocate for further cleanup and revitalization of water quality of those water bodies.
Yeah, and I would add to that, thank you, Tara, through the chair, I think we've got to really think about that, because Tara in her presentation has, I think, opened her eyes to the potential, that promenade and things like that. There's going to be opportunities for other groups besides the city to pitch in here and help. And I'm talking about service groups who, I'm sure they'd love to raise money for a rejuvenation of a bridge or a promenade. And I think we've got to focus on that moving forward, that beyond these lands, the Mohawk Greenwich lands and how they're all split up and dealt with, of course, that's our decision. But for the greater area, I think we've really got to work hard at the partnerships and working with other groups and organizations, Six Nations included, to build on the enthusiasm and the momentum that the decisions we're going to be making this fall are going to create. So that's my goal and my hope. And I support what staff have given us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. I've got
Mr. Chairman, I have to leave for another meeting soon. I'm wondering if I could just ask one quick question before I leave.
Certainly, because I had you at the bottom, so let's move you to the top and fire away.
Thank you. Just a question through to Tara. At one time, it was being considered to use district heat for this area with the heat from the landfill generation project. Is that still something that's being considered?
For you, I'm not aware of that plan, but I can get back to you and find out if there's any other information on where that left off.
Okay, thank you. And I did try to join the meeting at 11 o'clock, but unfortunately I didn't have the password to phone in. But I have another meeting that I'm chairing, so I'll have to leave for that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. I've got Councillor Utley and then Antosky, unless Cheryl has to leave. Here. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I'd certainly like to add my thanks to Tara and all the staff involved in this project, as well as fellow councillors and Mayor. I think the most exciting thing in that presentation today was the conceptual designs, which really take that vision and put it into something we can see and understand and certainly appreciate. This will be unrecognizable in the future to what we have right now. I do have a question, Mr. Chair, of Tara. The canal and the ditch shows a lot more water in the conceptual designs. Is that will that happen in actually, or like how will we get water flowing through that canal, or more water into the canal?
Through you, Mr. Chair, our photographs are conceptual, but in
Okay.
terms of water flow, we have Nahed here, who's the project lead on the rehabilitation, and I can allow him to add anything else.
Through Mr. Chair, yes, we have a comprehensive or integrated stormwater quality improvement strategy that part of the EA, of the environmental assessment that we have completed in August. And a part of that is to enhance work upstream of the canal to allow more water coming to the lake.
Good. One of the things I've seen in similar projects in other cities is having waterfalls, which have little dams that maybe, a couple of feet, 2-3 feet high, and they collect water, and which flows over the dam into the next section. And then there's a series of dams and waterfalls that go downstream. And I wonder if it not only collects water like dams do, but it also adds a lot more beauty to the canal. And I think there's something that's worth looking at, how other cities have around the world that have taken on similar projects. So thank you, Nahed. The other question I had is there's a couple of commercial areas in the plan that are zoned commercial or commercial, bear with me, or residential commercial. I would hope that we'll have like some coffee shops or little bistros or eateries that that enhance and bring people to that area. And then, people can get their snack or their coffee or pop, whatever it is, and then walk along the promenade, sit on a bench and admire the view and eat and drink at the same time. So I'm so excited about this. I think like we all are, that this has been a long journey, and it's nice to see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you everyone once again.
Thank you, Councillor Utley. Councillor Antosky.
Thank you, Chair. As not being a member of this task force, I appreciate your indulgence. And at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I just want to talk about FCM. Tara, you talk about a staff team or implementation committee. I forget how you referred to it, but I look at that promenade and I look at some of the build out that you're looking for, and this is a perfect example of where FCM can provide some grant funds from many different perspectives. We're looking at the brownfield revitalization aspect of it, plus the innovative use of the land, plus the tie to the river. So I really want to push that. And also, I look at all the greening areas. So Tree Canada is certainly something that we want to be looking at to help fund and help facilitate the tree planting, etc. there. This is a really exciting project. And one further than that, this is a project that we should have staff speaking about and representing and presenting at the FCM conference. This is a great project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Antosky. Before we go to the second round, I have a question for Tara Tran. Tara, you said you'd bring a report on November the 10th, but that's not a presentation, is it?
No, we haven't. We don't have a presentation scheduled.
Because when Councillor Utley mentions those artist drawings, those conceptions and stuff, I mean, that is so uplifting, and it really, really stamps that visioning that people have been talking about for it's the vision. It is the vision. And so what do we need to do for that meeting, or possibly at council, to have it so that that information is conveyed to the public so that they can see something conceptually tangible for the project versus, we received a report and we talked about it. What can we do?
Can I turn this question over to Lucy Hayes, the Director of Planning?
Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Right, Tara is correct. We don't have this as a presentation. We have a really challenging agenda on November 10th. There's 3 public meetings and 2 are for very significant development proposals. But we can talk to the clerk to see perhaps a pared down presentation, perhaps like 5 minutes. It's just that we are somewhat concerned that that particular meeting is going to be a challenge to get through. And if that doesn't work, perhaps there's another alternative evening that Tara could present. But we can certainly look into that and get back to you.
Yeah, if you could, that would be wonderful. We'll now go to second time speakers. Councillor Carpenter.
I will speak to 2 of the issues that we just talked about. The one about the presentation, I agree, it should be presented to the public, but if it can't be, Lucy, then when it comes to committee of the whole planning, at least we could have that presentation that you presented to us tonight put on the city's website and directed a link to the public and all our partners. And all the partners that were here today could put it on their site as well about the future. And let's get it out there to the people what we're looking at here. To Councillor, my ward mate, Councillor Antosky, who was on the FCM, it was Marguerite who was on the FCM that got the original funding to get the brownfield. She was relentless, and I'm sure I know you are as well, Cheryl. So it would be perfect to present this to FCM to say, here's what was once the, one of the worst brownfield sites in Ontario, if not the worst. And FCM's original funding for this site with the city and the federal government itself and the province. This was a result of all that work. So it's a kudos to FCM as well, but it would be a kudos to the city, as you said, having staff present all the work. I mean, Tara should be part of that for sure. Presenting all that work that was done to make this. This is what can be done when everybody works together. I think it shows the success of FCM. So the only other thing I wanted to bring up was I think we should engage maybe through our Indigenous collective meetings that we have, our group with Six Nations about the Glebe-land and the potential how the Glebe-land could fit into this model for housing for them and services. I mean, there's a lot of land there that could provide a lot of housing for First Nations and other things. But what their vision is for that particular land could come in line with this, and it is Six Nations property and could very well be something that could be developed in conjunction with it. So I don't want to lose the fact that we should at least engage in those discussions to our committee level. And maybe if the mayor can talk to the chief at first to see how if the timing is good and the political climate is good. But it's worth I don't want us to forget that opportunity as it borders the Mohawk Park.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. Councillor Utley, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got an idea. A picture is worth 1,000 words, as we all know. And assuming that this project and the plan gets approved by council, as I expect it will, I wonder if next spring maybe, we put up a billboard right at the crossroads at that intersection of Mohawk, Greenwich, and have a billboard with a conceptual design on it that people can see as they drive or walk past. That I don't think it'll cost a lot of money to do that, but man, I think that's going to be a real uplift for the people that live in that area and say, wow, I can't wait for this to come. So I just thrown that out as an idea, Mr. Chair, and I'd be willing to move that if a motion is needed, to at least have staff come back to us with an idea of what it would cost to install that billboard.
Is that a motion to? And
I'll move
Okay.
that if I can get a seconder.
Seconder for that? Councillor Carpenter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor Carpenter.
Any discussion?
At least let's find out what it would cost to do that, and that would sure give an uplift for people that I think in that area drive past there. That this is going to be really something when it's built.
Okay, on the motion, Councillor Antosky.
Just a quick thought that is brought to mind with Councillor Utley stating that if it is impossible to have a presentation, I'm assuming this is going to be an item that is separated to be discussed. Even just having one of those conceptual drawings on the screen, a shared screen, maybe that's something we could possibly talk about.
Hi.
Who's targeting that, Nicole or Lucy?
Well, I agree. I was just going to suggest that staff can be prepared to fully share our screens and to show those images. If we can agree that a counselor will ask us to do that, then we can fully do that and have those available and pull them up on our screen and speak very briefly to them.
Very good. Any other questions regarding the motion, Councillor Utley's motion?
Well, since I'm the mover of the motion, I think Councillor Utley was a seconder. I consider it friendly.
First. Sorry, I got that. I thought Councillor Utley made the motion to put regarding bring forward information on the billboard.
Yes, I'm just saying the original motion was moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Utley, so I'll consider it friendly if that's fine.
Oh, okay, that's it. Perfect.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Excellent.
No offense intended. No,
that's fantastic. And yes, I just would like to follow up on that. That a picture, no matter how it's done, how get that picture everywhere, I guess is what I'd like to say. So not, whether we do it on a council, on the screens, on the side of the road, whatever it takes, because that is, I think, a vision that everyone needs to see. So with that, no, there's any further questions then on the original motion. Councillor Carpenter.
Sorry, one more, and this has just been my vision for a long time. I think the city should consider the rest of the cleanup of Eagle Place and the North Ward. And I think we should be considering when we develop our next industrial lands, well, there's the private sector is going to do it, but we should consider the expropriation of what is left on that street, old industrial buildings, and finish the cleanup of that neighborhood. Expropriate and move them. I know that's a dirty word in politics sometimes, but it doesn't, we should finish the green space all the way down to Mohawk Lake and all that opportunity. We should not miss that opportunity with some forward thinking.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. Any further? Seeing none, I guess we'll call a vote. All those in favor, raise your hands physically. Oh, you're not right. And all those opposed. Sorry, if you're watching and wondering why Councillor Antosky's hand doesn't go up, she's not part of the committee, but she is participating. So that carries. Okay, we have one more thing here. Community groups. Ron Gasparetto, I'd like to call Ron Gasparetto, Manager of Real Estate, and Heidi DeVries, Solicitor and Director of Legal and Real Estate Services, to provide an update to the working group.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know Ron Gasparetto is also here, so we'll see if he can pop up for a minute. Excellent. So through the chair, very briefly, we want to say thank you for inviting us to be involved in this very exciting process in the city of Brantford. Personally, I grew up a few blocks from this site. And so this is so exciting, both personally and professionally, to be a part of this. And we want to say too, typically as staff, we would bring forward a fairly comprehensive report when we're discussing disposition strategies. I think you're familiar with some of our reports. And in this case, this is being brought forward as a memorandum, which is intended to be a framework for discussion by the working group. Because as staff, we ran into, I believe, what Mayor Davis just called the chicken and egg problem, where we have a conceptual plan going forward to a committee of the whole meeting in November. And yet we also have what I think could be almost an embarrassment of riches in responses to your expression of interest. So the responses that you've received from different community groups demonstrating an interest in this site is incredible. And how we now approach our response as a city to those expressions of interest will require some direction from the working group and then through council. Particularly, and I believe you have the memo in front of you, with respect to a few things identified in the memo, which will then drive the options before you. And I do want to say thank you specifically to the delegation from Lansdowne, who indicated that perhaps you don't have to choose one option. We set that out in our report as well in the conclusion that there may not actually be a one-size-fits-all approach to these lands. As well as when you hear from some of the groups, including Aboriginal Health and Lansdowne, where they have fairly sophisticated proposals and some funding from other levels of government may be waiting in the wings and dependent on an allocation of land. You may find that the timing for certain groups is different than that for others. Some may lend themselves to a leasing situation similar to what council has already approved with the CIHC, the lease which will be coming forward shortly to council as well, which is very exciting. And others may require the sale of the land so that they can build from there in terms of their capital program. So I did want to acknowledge that, and also we can update the acreage request from Lansdowne to reflect their current numbers from 9, that was contained in their expression of interest, to closer to the 6.57 acres that they've updated the working group on. And so specifically, just in terms of guiding this discussion, and I'm sure you'll have additional questions for both Ron and myself, but we wanted to indicate that I think there needs to be a discussion or a decision made about whether or not, if we move forward with a grant program, which is what we're recommending, or if you move forward with directing staff to negotiate with any one of the parties who was an express or more who have responded to the expression of interest. There will be the preliminary question of whether or not you consider the expression of interest closed. It was fair, open, and transparent from what we can tell. And of course, as committee members will be aware, you are not actually subject to the purchasing policy when it comes to the disposition of land. So you basically are able to chart the course that you deem appropriate for these particular lands in this process, which is a wonderful thing. So we can discuss those options in more detail shortly. But whether or not you wish to negotiate with those individuals or work with the individual community groups who replied to your expression of interest, or wish to present a more open grant program in case there are other community groups who are interested in applying through that program who maybe didn't respond to the expression of interest. And then number 2, of course, everything will be contingent on the approval of the land use framework that Tara Tran recently presented, and the allocation of space eventually through the OP process that I believe Tara indicated will be concluded in 2021. And so we're moving in conjunction with the planning process here as we discuss the disposition of the lands, which will then be contingent on final approvals of the planning process. As well as finally, I just want to indicate in the staff report that we'll be proceeding to Committee of the Whole Community Development, there is a rather robust analysis in the economic analysis section. And so as we look at the various requests from the community groups, which could take up most of the space that's been identified in the culture and community destination area, there will be some consideration, I'm sure, by both this working group and council as to whether or not you would like to reserve lands for private development. So that's where you're really going to be seeing more of the tax benefits. So in terms of revenues coming into the city, as well as looking at the diversity of land uses that you'd like on this site. So, economic drivers may be a consideration for the working group as well, knowing that balancing that with the idea of maybe more of a cultural hub and museum area. So all of that is our brief introduction, unless Mr. Gasparetto has anything to add.
Thanks, Heidi. Just briefly, we're very excited with this project. We've moved the football. I think we're right at near the end zone, and we get the opportunity now, to bring it home. So we're very excited about that. And and working very closely with the working group. So, Heidi, as usual, excellent explanation of our memo. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Mayor Davis.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the complexity of choosing, because there is not enough land there to satisfy everybody. And especially, the kind of the indication or the assumption is the city will just give us land for X. In some cases, perhaps. Other cases, perhaps not. So what I'm getting at is, we've been beating around the bush on this now for a while. I think we've got a clear understanding of what's available, and that this would be primarily the institutional land. The area that's designated for multi-density residential commercial, that's a different concept. But institutional, we have, I guess, maybe 7 or 8 groups. We have competing visions between a cultural hub, museum hub, taking care of 2 groups that need a lot of taking care of in the Aboriginal Health Center in Lansdowne. So we need to bring it forward to a decision. What do staff recommend to us as the decision-making process? And we were getting a lot of pressure from Lansdowne, now we're hearing from Aboriginal Health Center that they need some decisions made one way or the other, so that they can either move on and find some other location or develop their much needed plans to improve and renovate their facilities. Anyways, we got to move here. Like what, and I know I'm struggling to figure out what's a fair and equitable process, but the memo doesn't help us with that. What that should be and what the options might be.
Through the chair, and I think that's what we were struggling with as well. The memo doesn't help you with that because it requires more direction from the working group and council as to what your vision is for this site. So, our role in this process through legal and real estate services is assisting with the disposition of the lands, whether through a leasing strategy or perhaps a city-owned capital build or the sale and fee. But ultimately, it will be up to the working group and then council to determine whether or not you wish to utilize the lands for tax revenue purposes. I mean, which means that you'll be limiting the different community groups who would be here on the site to those who may actually find some ways to incorporate the commercial component, or whether or not you wish to establish more of a museum and cultural district. And I think the plan that you have seen from Ms. Tran, builds out those different uses on the site in a way that will contribute to the vibrancy of this particular area without actually creating one particular, maybe ghetto isn't the right word, but a district that may not generate revenue, but may be a destination for special interest groups. But I understand that the ask from the groups exceed the acreage when you look at the institutional uses that have been identified in that plan, and that's what we were struggling with as well. I believe, listening to the presentation from Lansdowne in particular, they're interested in the triangular portion as the gateway site, which has actually been designated. That's probably your most valuable land in terms of if you were asking Mr. Gasparetto to seek proposals from the development community in terms of development for a mixed-use commercial and residential. And slating that for institutional uses does mean that you're going to forego some of the economic benefits that have been identified in the staff report. That's not to say that there aren't other benefits. So it's really about, what are you looking to do on this site, taking into consideration the community interests that have been identified throughout this process.
Thank you. That runs out the clock on that. I believe I need a mover. Now, does a mover have to pick an option to move now, or do we discuss this and then decide? How does this work? Can anybody help me with that?
So to you, Mr. Chair, When you indicated you were running up the clock, were you treating Mr. Gasparetto and I as presenters?
10 minutes as presentations, and then my understanding, I'm not my first time chair under these new rules, but my understanding is that then now we go to our motions, and then we speak first and second, but we are able to ask you questions through our discussions with each other as we debate this.
Sure.
But what I want to know is what gets put on the floor.
So I think you could ask for a mover and a seconder to receive the memorandum, and then it's on the floor, and then we can continue on with this discussion, because the memo is intended to be a framework for this discussion.
Perfect. That's what I wanted to know. Mover, Councillor Carpenter. Seconder, Councillor Utley. Speakers, Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you. I'm not really interested in meeting with private developers for them to tell us what they think we should be doing with the site. I'm quite frankly quite tired of developers telling us what to do with our city. I'd like us to tell the developers what we want done with our city. It's time to reverse that process. But anyways, I see the other industrial lands that I mentioned earlier about expropriation not having to be expropriated, because making this a cultural hub will increase the value of those lands, and then private developers can buy from those people and add their housing or their projects, because our plan makes their land much more developable and much more profitable for them too, to sell. But right now we've got salvage yards and storage facilities that are 80, 100 years old down there that are, and I'm quite sure the salvage yard isn't picking up all the mercury from the scrap cars and things that get crushed there. And when there's another brownfield site probably being developed that we need to be cleaned up. But at the same time, I think we need to move rather quickly to get things going. We've been on this for some time. So I like the idea of getting the partners to work together. So I want to go back to the original request. I don't think we haven't gone back to the original 9. I don't think they all want space here now that's on our list. So the Children's Safety Village, for example, we're looking for a new, I think we've passed that we're going to look for a new location for the police station or increase the space they have now. Children's Safety Village makes more sense to be attached to the police station. It is in other communities for a good reason. I think what Brantford Symphony Orchestra is looking for is really for a place to store their equipment. And what I'd like to see is some of the groups that are looking for space to talk to the other partners and see if they can incorporate that space within the structure that they're doing. So our original thought on this was that, for example, Lansdowne Children's Center, and I'm not suggesting what they do, but most of their programs are in the daytime, and then there's empty space available at night, and maybe that at night space becomes available space that could be used somewhere else. We were looking for multi-use kind of collaborative approaches so that we aren't building more parking. Our planning requires a parking for a development, for example. You have to have so many parking spaces for this commercial or this institutional. Well, I'd like to see that dual use, so the parking lot's not empty at night. So I don't want to see this as a thing that closes down at 5 o'clock. I'd like to see this being part of the community and active groups participating, till 10 or 11 o'clock at night as part of their programming. And I think that's doable if we can get them talking together. Participation support services, I think they're behind the John Noble Home. The John Noble Home has 12 acres available back there if they want to rebuild on that site again. So I'm not sure if they're still interested or not. And then the Brantford Theatre Workshop, and I think there's some collaboration that needs to happen here. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. It's like kind of a partnership. And the process, I think, for whether we donate land or whether we sell land, I think it depends on what the community group does. If they add value to the community, I'm okay with making the donation of land if that helps leverage further provincial and federal tax dollars. So for me, it's all about what the long-term benefit is of the community. I'm not interested in so much in getting a sale of a piece of land so we can use that money someplace else in somebody else's favorite project. I really would like to see this kind of evolve within itself. I hope I haven't muddied the waters too much. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Seeing none, now again I get back to square one. Do we just receive this, move forward, let council decide in 2 weeks on this decision, or do we put something forward? I guess that is my question. Do we have to make that, do we have to choose between the options now?
So through the chair, no. But you could, what you're hearing though is that, and Ron Gasparetto and I had this discussion as well, that there may be synergies between some of these groups. As Councillor Carpenter noted, you know, building a warehouse on this site to store books, I don't think is in keeping with the overall vision of the property, but certainly finding ways to accommodate those types of requests where you have these wonderful groups within the city of Brantford, like the Symphony. There may be space. We just heard from the museum that they have a large indoor space and need to preserve some of the outdoor space for their planning during the summer months, I believe. What if there's a way to create some sort of synergies between those groups where there's some additional storage space within the museum, and then they can work together with the Symphony group to have that book sale on the property, and you have the parking available. And I think the other consideration that we've discussed this too, thinking from a staff perspective, is this idea of a space in Brantford where, like we've heard, people are there at night. You know, you could ride your bike there, you could walk there, you could get a coffee. The people of Eagle Place could go, you know, you're at the park, you could get dinner, go see a show, and then walk through this beautiful outdoor space and look at the history of the industrial development in the city of Brantford. And even with respect to the safety village, I just did want to comment on that because I know Mr. Gasparetto is working on the expansion project for the police, and I'm not sure if there's going to be sufficient land to accommodate about 2.5 acres. Maybe Ron can speak to that specifically. But we did, when we look at the site too, I'm going to say no, but Ron can clarify. I do think that there are synergies there, but there are also some synergies next to the CIHC. So you have the Children's Safety Village, which I think could be accommodated with a lease of land. Next to the 2 acres that have been set aside for the CIHC, they both have more of an open concept, and they do not require necessarily the same large structures that you see, like in terms of office space and like residential. I noticed the mayor was shaking his head there for a minute. I'm not sure if he was saying that we may be able to accommodate the safety village next to the police station, but yeah, I would say no. And so if I can, subject to, you know, being incorrect on that, which I don't think I am, I think that you could actually direct staff, being our real estate manager and myself, to go back and work with if you are willing to accept that those who have applied through the expression of interest process are the groups that City Council has indicated they wish to work with. I know that a lot of work has already been done by these groups through this process. You've heard from them multiple times, and we could work with those groups to look at what their actual needs are. Is that option one? Are you looking for land without actually having to establish a robust grant program, then asking to see if they are looking for the land for a nominal sum, or if they're willing to pay somewhere near fair market value, how that impacts their fundraising programs, and getting those details before the working group and then up to council, and basically putting this puzzle together, because that's really what it is. It's about looking at the various groups and seeing how we can fit them all together on this site. But what we will need to know, I think, is whether or not that triangular piece is intended to be used for a mixed use development by perhaps a private developer, because that's going to be the piece that's the economic driver on the site. And I think everything else is slated for institutional uses. What you're seeing there, those are the uses that you would contemplate perhaps entering into a grant of land because of the other benefits they bring to the city of Brantford. And that will require some hard discussions about you know, who is accommodated and who we may be assisting looking for another site within the city.
Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. So I have one question and some comments, but I thought the Children's Safety Village, that the County of Brant was taking care of them, and they had land for them in Canesville.
Through the chair, I don't have the details on that. That's what I read as well in the newspaper. And then I've heard that that is no longer the case. When we checked in with planning with respect to the requests and then narrowed it down to the 6 remaining requests, given their other accommodations, what was indicated to us is that all of those 6 requests remain on the table and active. And so if the county was accommodating the Children's Safety Village, their request would no longer be on this memorandum, but we can certainly follow up and provide an update to the working group on that.
Yeah, and I believe we should be aware that the Children's Safety Village wouldn't just be land. I think they want a very substantial contribution to the cost of constructing as well. So, but that's a problem. You know, we don't have a lot of information. But I'll get back to one thing we can't lose sight of is that, and I attended these events, there's been a lot of neighborhood consultation, and Chair, you know that. And the neighborhood generally accepted this conceptual plan, which did include a component of commercial and multi-residential. I think it's an important component of this. If you turn it all into institutional, it becomes an institutional ghetto and doesn't have some commercial life. I mean, you may not think well of commercial interest, but they provide life and vitality, and economic vitality to an area. And so, plus, I think Heidi's right. The 6.5 acres in the orange, that's the most valuable. And where are we gonna get the money to do the 15.3 acre park that'll, we think, maybe vision, this will replace Lions Park as being probably a more appropriate outdoor performance type facility. And that's gonna require money. And some of the promenades and main streets and all of that infrastructure that would be our responsibility, no matter who's going into the various lots. I think it's appropriate to recoup some money from some of this, and also doing it in accordance with the wishes of the neighborhood. So, but then I come down to, I'm still getting stuck on how to move this forward with the institutional blue areas and trying to make some decisions. Because if that's all that we're going to be doing, 3.1 acre, 6.2, 3.5, we don't have enough land to do everything that these various groups want. And we're gonna have to make some hard decisions about who are we going to accommodate and who are we not. And I guess we could accommodate everybody if we're willing to take the orange and lands commercial and put them into blue. I'd be opposed to that. But anyways, I think what's clear from the discussion is that we're all excited by the vision of what this is going to do to the city and this neighborhood. We've got some, let's call them mini visions that are competing, and we've got to make decisions on them. And I guess I'll undertake to work with the chair and senior staff to see if we can get a process in place to make these decisions, right? Because we keep coming up to this issue and we realize we got to make some decisions, but I think we're all kind of, I'm not sure we're going to do that, and to be fair to everybody. So that requires, I think, some more thought and more thought by me as mayor and by us as council and senior staff as well. A roadmap for us, how we get through this to make these decisions.
Any other first-time speakers? Councillor Utley, anything? If not, okay. When we're looking at the layout of the land and it was done in the visioning, how were those areas structured that's how it came to us? Who was behind that said, this part here is going to be institutional? Because I've seen that stuff said this part here is going to be commercial residential. That is what the community, we had multiple choices on the visioning that we wanted. The community chose this one, and it's not just Eagle Place, it was actually the city as a whole. But obviously Eagle Place had a huge voice in a lot of that direction pre the final choices that were to us. So I would have thought that this legwork would have been the legwork done in the presentation of when we were choosing the three options. And now we're saying, okay, we've got these options and we want to rejig them kind of in the opposite ways. Was this not known to us of the commercial benefits prior to that going public to ask people what they wanted? Anybody can try and answer that one.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll speak to the planning process and how we came to this final recommended plan. So as you know, it started with the vision and what kind of uses that both local community but the wider community wanted, and we heard the full range of land uses. The site is constrained by certain pieces, given that the existing military museum already exists there, as well as the lease for the CIHC. So those were already established. There were 3 options in the first round, and based on those 3 options, we heard that primarily people were very excited about the large event space and then the general mix of land uses in the other parts. We end up combining, so while we had option 1, 2, and 3, and we end up combining 2 options together to come up with what you see before you, which was, again, trying to achieve a balance between a space that valued green and open space, honored the museum uses, as well as saw a mix of other land uses, commercial, residential, and institutional. The other piece to really emphasize here is that the Main Street spine that connects and sort of links into both Drummond Street to the north and Emily Street to the south is a very important piece to help knit this development into the existing community. And so we see this Main Street as needing to be something that has storefronts or office fronts to be very vibrant. And those are sort of the pieces that came all together to bring what we think is a balance of what we heard from the community, but also what is technically feasible and economically responsible. And I'll just add that back in June 2019, that generally this is what was brought forward.
Yeah, this is what the community chose, and then this is what we endorse. So I think we have to stay on that path of second time speaking opportunities. Councillor Carpenter.
You probably could tell I'm passionate about this, but I'm not in agreement with the 15.3 acre park as replacing Lions Park for large events. So, as the large events that happen at Lions Park, where they face the river, certainly are farther away from residential development than they would be here. They're just across the canal. You have a bunch of residential homes, and we'd be blaring into their backyard. So, the large scale concert events in any of both those locations is not a good idea. In fact, the best place for large scale events is still in the city boundary, but it's called Brant Park. And there's a tremendous amount of land that can be developed out there for large scale events that will not have an impact on the residential neighborhoods because they're far enough away there. So, and in fact, there's lots of land. If you come down the hill in Brant Park to the right, there's a perfect spot where we could have had. In fact, I think someone tried to do that on a previous council, and for some reason didn't work out. But there is an opportunity there for large scale events, and that Brant Park is totally within the boundary of the city, by the way. So that land, could be used. And I don't know if I'm not a real estate developer, but I don't know why the orange, the 6.5 acres at the point is considered to be the most valuable piece. I mean, I would think if you're going to build a apartment building or some large scale housing, you might want to be looking over the canal, the new improved canal, or maybe the Mohawk Lake. Closer to the Mohawk Lake views from your apartment would be a higher value in my perspective. So I think the development will happen from the other industrial land that we don't own that will provide us with tax revenue, unless we're talking about sale of land revenue to make this all happen. But I think we want to make sure that whatever group comes on here, that they fully fund it themselves. I'm okay with giving donations of land, but I'm not okay with paying for any capital or operating expenditures. I think where we get ourselves in trouble as a city is building things, and then we got the operating expenses are huge on the taxpayer ongoing. That's sort of where we get ourselves in trouble, I think. So, but I am in favor, Heidi, of yourself and Ron getting together with the groups and seeing how they could work collaboratively, find out what their vision is, and seeing what their funding options are and what ideas they have, report back to the committee, and maybe with an option of what would that look like for us to make the decision. As the mayor said, we need a roadmap on the decision-making process, but I think we shouldn't have that until after we've had the discussion with the groups about what they can do and what they can't do and what their needs are and how they can work with each other to make this grow. And then maybe there will be some space at the end of the day for some sale of land for some development. I'm not sure, but I think they need to have that discussion collectively. You're doing a great job, Mr. Chair.
Any other second time speakers? Okay, seeing none, I just want to state, so we've got a couple presentations here. I'm going to call the question shortly. The two of the presenters, as I'm aware, certainly one for sure, needs to have a date and an address, because you're not going anywhere without that. If we pass this now, is that discussion going to happen in the upcoming months? Will that be moving forward? Anybody want to try and answer that for me based on what's before us?
Oh, through the chair, I'll walk into that. And I believe you're speaking about Lansdowne, correct?
I am actually,
right.
Yes.
So you could direct staff to work with Lansdowne to negotiate the potential sale of a parcel of land and location of that parcel somewhere within the culture and community destination area as part of the direction to go back to these individual groups. And I have to say too, I think the presentation by Aboriginal Health today was interesting to both Ron and I, because they've incorporated commercial components into their requests. So when we looked at the expression of interest originally, we didn't actually assume that there would be commercial components. So there may be a way, and there's actually, I believe, also a residential component. So there may be a way to hit off the commercial, residential, and the, they're asking for office space within their project. I mean, I know the conceptual drawings showed them in a certain location. But if perhaps we find a way to speak with Aboriginal Health about their proposal and the viability of that proposal, if they're willing to commit to something of that nature and their funding would support it through their financial planning, you may be able to find a way to meet what you've heard from the community through that proposal while reserving the institutional land for Lansdowne. And as you heard from Councillor Carpenter, I mean, I don't want to step into a planning process that's taken a lot of time, but if you switch the orange area, I think Lansdowne does have their eye on that triangular piece. If that turns to blue and institutional, and they were able to switch another area to the mixed use commercial residential, again, we'd have to talk to planning about that. They've done all of that work, but perhaps that's the best direction to look back to these groups.
So do I need a resolution off the floor, basically directing you to work with these two groups, and then come back to us with something that fits within what has been passed previous by council?
Right. I think the direction would be that the manager of real estate be directed to work with Lansdowne Children's Center for the disposition of approximately 6.5 acres within the site and bring that proposal back to the working group, and to work with the remaining groups to determine whether or not there may be synergies that would fit within the remaining area of land. If that's a decision that you're willing to make here and a direction, I mean, ultimately you're not reserving that land. It all has to go back to council.
That's right.
You're basically.
If there's a councillor on the floor that wishes to move that in a seconder, okay, let's do that. And any discussion? Seeing none, let's call the question on the motion. All raise your hands physically. That is done. Okay, now do we have to pass the other motion in general that's before us, the report that we're receiving?
To receive.
To receive. Very good. Seeing that there's no other speakers to that, I call the question to receive the report. All in favor, raise your hands. None opposed. Okay, I think thank you very much. That was very knowledgeable, I guess. Good for me after a night shift to have to get into the nitty gritties on stuff. All right, we are at consent items, minutes from the last round. Is there a mover? And a seconder? Councillor Utley and Councillor Carpenter. Any errors and omissions? Seeing none, let's vote for the minutes. All in favor? There are no resolutions, there are no notices of motions, and the next meeting date is to be determined. I would imagine that might be contingent upon some discussions that may happen based on the just previously passed vote. We are adjourned.